My twin sister framed me for her DUI in college, and my parents made me take the blame. Years later, they showed up at my door homeless because she sold their house without permission. I'm Haley, 25F, and I have had a rough and broken childhood. I have two older brothers, Hunter, 30M, and Harold, 28M. I also have a twin sister, Heidi, but we are estranged at this point. I mostly just talk to my brothers, but that's about it. I do not have contact with my parents, who are 60M and 56F, either. I haven't been in touch with them for ages, and I never thought the day would come when they would reach out to me again. I fantasized about this day a lot for years. I kept thinking about what would happen if they started talking to me and what would occur during that first call or meeting after so many years of being estranged. It always either started or ended with them apologizing to me for treating me poorly and ruining my future. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that when the day finally came, they would actually hurt me even more in different ways. Our parents made it very clear that they didn't want 4 kids. They had planned for 3, and everything around them was mentally structured around the life they would have had if there were just 3 of us. But there were 4, Heidi and me were twins, and nobody expected that one of us would arrive. Soon, they made sure everyone knew that one of us was an extra, so to speak. The extra was me. They never said it directly, but that's how they made me feel every single day of my life. I was the one who wasn't supposed to be there but still was, and I was always reminded of that fact by my parents. I have to be honest about that. My brothers and I have always been close-knit. They had my back even when I was a kid, and honestly, I never really knew where I would have been if it weren't for them. They kept me sane in that dysfunctional house and continued to support me afterward. The discrimination started pretty early on. For example, if our parents bought things for us, it was always Heidi deciding what she wanted, and I would get what she didn't want. If mom had to make lunch according to the kids' preferences, it was always Heidi's preferences that came above mine. The thing was, the twins were seen as one unit. We weren't viewed separately, especially by our parents, and the unit essentially meant Heidi. It was Heidi all along. It hurt deeply. By the time I was 7 or 8, my brothers kind of understood what was happening. I don't know why they did, but it affected them, and in their own way, they tried to include me in things and activities. To my parents, I wasn't Haley, I was just not Heidi. Heidi loved the attention. She lapped up every last drop of it like a hungry dog. She loved being the center of attention, and gradually things got worse. I withdrew into my shell even more, and the only time I was even remotely social at home was with my brothers. They didn't like her much because she didn't interact with them. When she did, it was always as though she was somehow above all of us, and whatever she said had to be the rule. That's not how siblings, especially brothers, operate. She had gotten princess treatment her entire life and thought that Hunter and Harold would extend the same to her. They never did, so she was never close to them. Both of us did well in school initially. We used to have similar grades, but hers gradually slipped as we reached high school. She was involved in some extracurricular activities, and her social life was booming. Maybe that was the reason my grades didn't slip. On the contrary, I delved deeper into academics when my brothers left for college. That was the only way I knew how to cope because both of them chose to go to colleges out of state. It was tough for me at home after that, so I immersed myself in studying and volunteering at a local shelter. The issue started when Heidi and I began applying and shortlisting colleges. To be honest, her resume was better than mine, and she had a better chance of getting into the college of her choice than I did, even though I had slightly better grades. Nonetheless, both of us applied, and surprisingly, we both got into the same university. I hated the fact that I would have to attend the same university as her, and even our parents were a little bummed. I think it was because I got in too. They were only rooting for Heidi, and me being as good as her and getting into the same college somehow made them bitter about the situation. The best part was that I got a scholarship and she didn't. We both went to college but had different lives there. She immediately went into party girl mode, whereas I never found the appeal of that lifestyle. Things went downhill very fast. One night, a few months into college, I got a frantic call from Heidi saying that she had screwed up majorly and needed me to help her out. This was the 2nd or 3rd time we had spoken to each other after coming to college. I asked her what had happened, and she told me she couldn't explain it over the phone, and that I needed to meet her. I went to her room, and she looked pretty shaken up. I genuinely got scared and felt bad for her. Little did I know that she was about to ruin my life in a different way. She told me she had been out partying with some friends, and all of them were soused or blacked out. She was the only one in a better condition than the rest, so they decided she should drive back. But she was drunk as hell too, lost control of the car, and rammed into the wall of a house. She said the police had come and asked her to go to the station again tomorrow, and she was scared because she didn't want to have a record. I asked if she had spoken to mom and dad, and she said she had, but they were furious with her, and she didn't want to talk to them. She said she wanted to head out for some air and grab a bite. I didn't notice, but she had taken my wallet with hers. What happened next was the kind of betrayal I wouldn't have expected from my enemies. I stayed with her the entire night. She took a while to come back, and when she did, she looked much better than before. I went back to my room, and the next day, I was summoned by my department head, saying he wanted to meet me urgently. When I went to meet him, I saw cops there. I thought they had come for Heidi, but they had actually come for me. They asked why I was drinking and driving last night, and said the university had decided to have a disciplinary inquiry against me. I was shocked and told them they had the wrong girl. It wasn't me but my twin. They said the offender had registered herself as Haley Porter and had shown them the ID, so I needed to cut the crap. It all began to make sense now. Heidi had called me under the pretext of feeling scared and wanting support, but she had ultimately ended up submitting my ID to the police when she went out the previous night. Once she returned, she asked me to drink a little, and I was stressed, so I obliged, ensuring that if I got tested for alcohol, the results would come out positive. I begged them to understand and told them the truth, but they thought it was too far-fetched to be real. I was let go, and I was devastated. I called Heidi, but she didn't answer. Then I called mom and dad, and they said I needed to understand that Heidi's career would be ruined if I didn't help her out, especially because she had taken so many loans, whereas I had a scholarship. They told me I owed this to my sister, and that I wouldn't have to bear the brunt of this more than my sister would. I just couldn't believe they would stoop to this level to protect her. It was unreal the way they were behaving. I had always known they loved her more, but this was like a slap in the face. No, actually, it was like multiple slaps on both cheeks in full public. They were willing to let me get punished for a crime she committed because if she took responsibility, she would be ruined the same. Somehow, this didn't apply to me. I disconnected the call and called Harold. He was furious. He said he would talk to mom and dad, but in the meantime, he told me that no matter what happened, I didn't have to admit I was the one driving drunk. He told me to stick to the truth and not cave under pressure, and that he would talk to them about the rest. Unfortunately, none of that was required because within the week, I had been expelled from college on behavioral grounds. That was the day my parents and sister became dead to me. Mom and dad were expecting me at home, but I just had nothing left to say to them. I went to Hunter's place and wrote a letter to the university detailing everything that had really happened. I knew they wouldn't reverse their decision, but I also knew I needed to keep a record of what had happened because it might help me in the future. I went completely no contact with my parents. They tried to reach out a few times, but I never responded. My brothers were my rock during this time. From what they tell me, and I don't ask much, they ripped mom and dad a new one and made sure the extended family and some of their friends knew what really went down. They say mom and dad are kind of ostracized from the larger community because of this little misadventure. Hunter and Harold have low contact with them too. They say all their lives, mom and dad have only wanted to be parents to Heidi, so we're just granting them their wish. I stayed with Hunter for a couple of months. I picked up a job, but he didn't let me contribute to anything. He asked me to save up the money because it would help with college. I ended up going to college the next academic year. In the end, what happened was actually beneficial for me, even though it shouldn't have happened. I was finally able to study what I really wanted to, and even though I had to take out some loans, I knew there was no hiding from her, and I could live life on my own terms. So, while there is an entire year and an unexplained expulsion on my CV, I ended up studying what I love and found a job I love. I graduated 2 years ago and landed a good job straight out of college. The job, however, was on the other end of the country, so it was quite a shift and moving out. However, I've been working for the past 2 years now, and things are good. I like the way my life is now. Heidi and my parents do try to get in touch once in a while, but I just don't respond. I have moved forward in life and don't need them in mine anymore. They are the ones who are guilty, which is why they are the ones dying to make amends. Hunter and Harold have low contact with them, and they keep me updated if I ask anything. But other than that, there isn't really much family talk among the three of us, and they never divulge any information about me to them. They know better than to do that. That's the one thing I want from them. Just do not let them know what I do, where I am, and how I'm doing. My brothers have respected that all these years. However, a few days ago, mom and dad were at my doorstep, ringing the bell at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was too tired to realize it was them, but the audacity with which they welcomed themselves left no doubt that I wasn't dreaming and that it was actually them. They said it had been so long since I had spoken to them, and that they missed me so much. They cried every night, so they just decided to come and meet me themselves. I asked them who gave them the address, and they said Hunter did. I called Hunter straight away to yell at him, and he swore that he wasn't the one who gave them my address. I flung the phone in their faces. I'm normally a good host, but I just didn't want these guests around and told them to sort it out with him and tell me the truth, or I was going to throw them out onto the street. For all I cared, I was still going to do just that, but I wanted to know who had told them about my whereabouts. They tried gaslighting both Hunter and me, but deep down I knew he wouldn't do something like this. This went on for a while, and I told them that if they didn't come out with the truth within the next 15 minutes, I was throwing them out. Nonetheless, the thing was they had come with suitcases, many suitcases, and it looked like they were planning to live here. I don't know who or what gave them that idea. All I knew was that they weren't welcome in my house, not by a stretch. They could go wherever they wanted, but I wouldn't let them stay here no matter what. They tried stalling again and laughing it off, so when the 15 minutes were up, I started picking up their suitcases one by one and keeping them outside. That's when they realized I was serious and I wouldn't let them stay until they came out with the truth. That's when they said they had gotten the address from social media. They had been following my accounts using fake profiles for a couple of months, and that's how they found out where I live. So they were basically stalking me virtually. I honestly don't know how someone can find out my exact address by stalking me on a few socials, but I was too sleepy for their crap, especially since all this was happening on a Saturday. I told them I was going to go to sleep for a couple more hours, and they were welcome to sleep until then as well. However, after that, they needed to get out of my house and never show their faces again. I told them they could use the time I was sleeping to find alternate accommodation or book a ticket to whatever godforsaken hole they wanted to go to, but my hospitality to them wasn't going to extend beyond that. They tried to butt in and get a few words in, but I just went upstairs and locked my room. I was hoping they wouldn't steal something from the house, but if they did, they did. I just wanted to sleep and then kick them out. When I woke up, they had made themselves comfortable and started unpacking all their stuff. My living room was a mess, but since I was feeling better after the sleep, I didn't lose my temper as quickly as I had that morning. I asked them what made them think they could actually stay here. At first, they tried beating around the bush, saying the same things like, "We missed you," and "It's time to bury the past and move forward as a family," but I wasn't buying it. I pushed a little and my mother finally broke down. When I say broke down, I mean she literally broke down, sobbing like a hurt child and wailing. It was weird to watch. Honestly, she tried saying something, but not even 1% of it was coherent. So I asked my dad what was up, and he revealed the truth to me. He said they had been kicked out of the house and now had nowhere to go. I looked at him in disbelief and asked how the hell he was kicked out of his own house. He said a few years ago, in college, Heidi started getting into a lot of crap. She was involved with the wrong people and ended up screwing up her academics altogether. She was expelled from college and then promised them she would turn over a new leaf. She got into another college, but without scholarships and with her criminal record, she stood in the way of getting loans. Long story short, Dad and Mom gave one floor of the house to a couple to rent. They were sketchy people, according to them, but they trusted them because Heidi had brought them in. She knew them, and it was through her that they rented the house. But now, they had taken possession of the whole house. They smoked pot on the first floor all day, and the stench was unbearable. They had loud parties, and whenever Mom and Dad tried to complain, Heidi intervened because they couldn't behave this way with her friends. Long story short, the way they had been keeping the house wasn't livable for Mom and Dad anymore. 3 months ago, Mom had a health scare because of all the pot they were smoking, and that was when Mom and Dad decided to leave for a while, leaving Heidi behind to take care of the mess, a rookie mistake. They told me they had given her a stern talking to, hoping she would realize what she had done and step up to take responsibility, but that little shit just screwed them over big time. When they went back last week, the locks had been changed, and that pot couple was now on the ground floor. Heidi wasn't picking up their calls, and when they said they would call the police, they got the shock of their lives. Heidi had, behind their backs, sold the entire house to her friends. She must have forged signatures and documents, but the house was now in the possession of her friends, and my parents said they could do nothing. I told them, of course, you could do something. You could file a report against Heidi and those guys. Forgery is a huge deal, and if Heidi forged those documents, she would be in jail for a long, long time. They looked uncomfortable and said they knew Heidi would have to serve jail time if they went forward with a complaint, which is why they decided to get her into therapy. In the meantime, they thought they would stay with me. I looked at them like a deer in headlights. It took me a couple of minutes to process their audacity. I told them they had come to me instead of holding Heidi accountable, knowing full well she had committed a crime. They had forgotten what they did to me all those years ago when I had been forced to take the blame for their criminal daughter. They didn't say anything at first, but when I started accusing them more, they said I needed to show some compassion. My sister has always been a troubled child, and as parents, it's your duty to stand by her when she strays, not throw her to the dogs, they argued. I told them they had not stood by me at all, even when I hadn't strayed. It was clear from the way they spoke that they were only interested in being parents to Heidi, not to me. Since they didn't see me as family, I had no problem throwing them to the dogs. I told them in no uncertain terms that they were not welcome here. They were homeless by choice, not because they were in distress. They had allowed this to happen, and even now, they were letting her get away with something as big as this, which is why this was completely on them. I told them they weren't welcome in my place, and they needed to get out before I called the cops. They tried to push and emotionally blackmail me again, but I told them none of that was going to work. They had to move out. I think they finally understood that I wasn't breaking and didn't feel any pity for them. They made a lot of faces, but ultimately left. Even at the end, they kept telling me I needed to reconsider and that they wouldn't have anywhere to go, but I just said that was on them. It wasn't my problem. They had other children to beg in front of, but they were dead to me, and I wouldn't be helping them out no matter what situation they were in. They looked defeated and finally left, but my head has been pounding since this happened 3 days ago. I don't know where they've gone. They haven't tried contacting me, and I'm glad, but I can't help but wonder where they might have gone. Update 1 asterisk. I know it hasn't been long, but I have an update for all of you. Hunter called me yesterday and told me Mom and Dad had come to his place unannounced. I had informed both him and Harold when they had come, and I was expecting them to go to Hunter's. Harold doesn't live nearby, so he is safe. Hunter told me they unloaded their sob story right at the beginning, and now they villainized me, saying I kicked them out of the house, and that they knew that favoring Heidi was the right thing to do because I had grown up to be incomplete thought. Anyway, Hunter mumbled that Heidi was a bigger problem because she stole their home, but they kept defending her, and Hunter was exhausted. Hunter lives with his girlfriend, CIA, and she was furious about how they had randomly dropped by with baggage in hand. CIA is a no-nonsense person. She doesn't have the bandwidth for anyone's bullshit and doesn't mince words when she talks. She straight up asked them how long they planned to stay. They said they would be here for a while. She asked again, how long is the while? And they said a couple of days. They kept giving vague answers and she just lost it. She asked them to give her an actual date so she could plan accordingly. That's when they said they didn't have a date in mind because, since they had nowhere else to go, they were waiting for Heidi to come to her senses so they could move back into the house. That confession was what CIA was waiting for. She said she would let them stay as long as they wanted and as long as it took for the issue to be resolved. Before she could finish, they started rejoicing, but the main part comes later. She told them there was a caveat. My mother piped in, saying they wouldn't disturb their privacy and would clean up after themselves. She said she didn't have any issues with late-night parties or anything, trying to paint the picture of the perfect guest. CIA laughed and said that wasn't what she was talking about. She said she would let them stay only if they pressed charges against Heidi and took active steps to regain possession of their house. Hunter told me it looked like someone had stabbed them with a dagger. They said Heidi was being cruel and they couldn't do it, but CIA was adamant. She said this was the only way they could stay, and now they had a choice to make. She said she was offering them a roof, but they had to do the right thing in return. If they still chose to protect Heidi, that was on them and they couldn't turn around and blame their kids. To nobody's surprise, they refused. They said they would rather be homeless than turn on their child, and CIA congratulated them and kicked them out. She is a badass, I love her. Hunter says he has no idea where they are and they might try to come back to me again, but I told him he didn't have to worry about me. I would kick them out if they tried something smart with me. Update 2 asterisk. They finally had to press charges against Heidi and her friends. There were a lot of complaints by the RWA, and they took matters into their own hands. I don't know the details of what's happening, but I know Heidi is screwed. They aren't talking to Hunter or Harold, and we're just ecstatic to be rid of them at this point. Heidi tried getting in touch with Hunter and asked him to knock some sense into Mom and Dad, but he hasn't responded. That's the last we've heard from them, and I hope it stays that way. They're weirdly meshed with each other, and if they can't take their heads out of their asses, that's on them. I have tried really hard to build this life literally from scratch, and I will not allow them to come and crap all over it. That's just not how it goes with me.